Hello and welcome to the Jumpstart Podcast with Jeffalytics. I'm your host, Jeff Sauer. Today, for our 34th episode, we're going to share some of our favorite advice from the first year of the Jumpstart Podcast. I'm recording this episode from Thailand, where I'm going to be spending the winter working on some important projects and doing the whole digital nomad thing. So that's Thanksgiving in the United States, and today's episode is going to be a little bit shorter than normal. We're going to give you a special introspective episode on the last year. Can you believe it's been a year so far? We released our first episode of the podcast on October 1st of 2015. This is actually the same day that Bill Simmons started his podcast, which has been off the charts with the number of downloads. They've surpassed us significantly. But we've done 33 episodes since we launched. Some other developments in the podcast, we moved to an every other week schedule earlier this year, and we've also made other adjustments along the way. I've tried shorter interviews, I've tried longer interviews, I've tried rapid fire questions. Some of them have stuck, some of those things are still in the working. So I appreciate you listening to me along the way as we find our voice, and I also hope you are as inspired as I was by the awesome guests that we've had on the show. And most importantly, I appreciate our guests who have given up their valuable time to talk about their origin stories. It's been so much fun talking to everyone. These are friends. These are people I root for. These are people that I want to see succeed. So we've been compiling our favorite quotes and topics from guests and updating a PDF each month on our website. I'll link to these quotes in our show notes so you can take a look and follow along and see the visuals because it's a pretty cool document. To get to the show notes, visit jeffalytics.com/gobble. And I can't help but point out the amazing, super timely Thanksgiving reference on there. If you're listening to this after Thanksgiving, you're probably wondering, what is this guy doing? Also, before we get to the quotes, I have a request. Who else should we have on the podcast in future episodes? Any ideas, any recommendations, or do you care to make any introductions? I would love to hear from you. And now on to the quotes. We're going to start with one from Angie Schottmuller, who of the people on this list, she's actually the only one who is a former coworker of mine, and she's also a Forbes top 10 online marketer. Her quote is, "Be a rebel, boldly pave your own way." I really enjoyed Angie's episode because she, a theme throughout her interview was her being a rebel at just about every point in her life and how it impacted her ability in the CRO community. So her being a rebel has paid off for her in droves. Next, we have Krista Seiden, who's the analytics advocate at Google. Krista and I just saw each other last month in Sydney and in Melbourne in Australia, and we recorded a video for the periodic table of Google Analytics. Now, Krista, she was the second interview on our podcast all the way back in October of 2015, and her quote was, "Find mentors and role models in the industry." Now, it's a pretty straightforward quote, but she talked about how much her career was influenced by the great mentors she surrounded herself with, and I couldn't agree more. She told an awesome story on her episode about the role of mentorship. Next, we have James Loomstein, who's a partner at Rogue and a university lecturer. He says, "Stop being a wandering generality and become a meaningful specific." He came just guns blazing with that quote in his episode, and he was so prepared to say it. And I didn't really realize the gravity of it when he said it, but yes, it means everything to stop being wandering in general and become meaningful and be specific. That's career advice that we can all learn from and we can all apply. The more specific you are, the more valuable you can be in a specific area, the better off you're going to be. So great career advice from James. Darren Shaw, who's a guy who I arm wrestled not once, not twice, but 3 different times. He's from Edmonton, and he's the founder of White Spark. He says, "Get involved in the community." Now, Darren's one of those guys. He is a great example of his community involvement. He was in the Moz community and contributed significantly there, and then his contributions helped him start his business and get some of his first customers by being in the Moz community. So joining the community was a lot for him, and he recommends that you do it as well. Next, Mike King, or Mike Cool King, the managing director at iPullRank. Probably the coolest guest that I've had. Sorry, other guests, but he's a cool guy. He says, "What is the problem you're actually trying to solve?" So his advice is figure out, what problem are you trying to solve? What are you going after? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to solve? You can notice with every piece of content he puts out there and everything he does. It's very purposeful, trying to solve problems. And that's why I've started to develop a content man crush on Mike King based on the awesome content he puts out there. Next, Lisa Grimm, who's the social media chef at Whole Foods. I'm not sure if that's her actual title or not, but she says, being passionate about something is not enough. You also need to be diplomatic in order to navigate your environment. And so just being raw and passionate about something isn't going to get you what you need. You need to deal with other people, and you need to understand them, and you need to work with them. Otherwise, your good ideas are probably going to go nowhere. Ollie Gardner, the founder or co-founder of Unbounce, he says, start writing immediately. I don't know if you remember Ollie's episode, but it was the hero's journey to learning marketing. That was his first ever blog post that he wrote. Put it on Moz, and it got like 10,000 shares and likes and everything. It just went crazy. Like this guy, Ollie, of all the guests, he's the one who basically says, if I'm going to do something, I want to be the best in the world at it. And he actually does it. Not saying that other guests haven't done that, but Ollie is a super competitive guy, and he's just awesome at what he does. And he only does it. He only puts his effort into something if he's going to be awesome at it. And I really commend him for that. Leah Pika, data presentation expert, a friend of mine. We actually started a mastermind group based on our podcast interview. So we talked to each other in 2015, and we started meeting on a weekly basis to talk about our businesses. And she says, capture the attention of your audience. Exactly. She's a presentation expert, and she's telling you capture their attention and keep it, hold it, and do something with it. So she's an awesome guest, and that's great advice for all of us. Rand Fishkin, you might know him as the Wizard of Moz. He says, always ask yourself who is going to amplify your content and why. So if you're creating content and you think that just the production of content is enough for you, what you should really consider is who cares about this and why would they care about it and why would they amplify it. He sees a lot of bad marketing out there, and he isn't shy about saying when marketing is bad, and he wants you to challenge yourself and say, if I'm writing this, who is my audience and will they amplify it to the next level? Sheena Schleicher, who's an SEO CRO champion based out of San Diego. We had a great conversation on the podcast and have been talking ever since then. She says, do as much free work as you can to build relationships. Now, I assume this is when you're starting out. She is a great example of also being involved in the Moz community, did a lot of free work to get relationships and to do things. And that free work led to so much paying work that now she doesn't have to do free work anymore. She has a really successful and thriving agency. So Sheena did a great job of taking her own advice, and she left that advice for you as well. Next, we jump the pond to Samantha Noble, chief editor at State of Digital. And she says a sales job helps massively in your understanding of marketing. Sam's story was really cool. She was in Australia and she started trying to sell strawberries, and she figured out that if she could sell strawberries in Australia, she could be a great marketer. And it's really something that's applied ever since, everything she's gone into. And we had a great conversation about how these little seemingly unconnected things like sales jobs and marketing, how importantly they all tie into each other. So make sure you listen to Sam's origin story to hear about how that worked. And she has a lovely British accent as well. Next, Cyrus Shepherd, who at the time was the head of SEO at Moz. He was the SEO at the SEO company. Now he's gone on to his own affiliate marketing and other startups that he doesn't really talk much about. But he says, find a market for what you sell. And if you want to grow, find a bigger market. I love it. Cyrus Shepherd is a gentleman and a scholar. I really enjoyed talking to him. And we still try to keep up to date as often as we can about entrepreneurship and the struggles and the successes of going out on your own, because he's recently done that even since I started this podcast. Phil Mackey. He's not a marketer. He's the ESPN sports radio host and an author in my local hometown of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And he says, when that lucky opportunity knocks, you better be prepared. Phil had an awesome story about how he got an internship at a radio station and how he kept on parlaying that into more and more responsibility. Eventually, he's on ESPN radio as a sports host. So he's basically the model of persistence and just working hard to get it done. All right, next we move on to another Minnesota guy, Lee Oden, who's the top-ranked marketing CEO. He says, make clients and sponsors look good. Now, Lee Oden is a legend in my hometown because he does exactly that. He makes everybody look good. He makes himself look good, and he really does accelerate the overall quality of marketing in not just the local Twin Cities market, but worldwide. And so a lot of respect for Lee, and I appreciate his quote. Next, Elena Solis, who's an international SEO consultant. She's also a digital nomad herself. And we talked, I was in Italy, I think she was in Spain. She said the best clients you can have are your former clients. So basically, if you want to grow your business, go and talk to the people you've worked with in the past because they know who you are, they know what you can do, and a lot of times they're looking to work with you. So those are great clients to have. Julian Coquet, we actually interviewed him back in February of 2015 when I decided to do a podcast, and then I finally released it in October of 2015, episode 3. So he had to patiently wait for 9 months to be glorified on the podcast. But now he's being glorified again. Present your findings in a way that makes your +1 shine, and everyone wins. I honestly don't know what that means in this quote. And that's funny in itself, and I'm going to leave this in there because it's sort of funny to think that. But I think that what he means is that anybody who you're working with, anybody who's on your team, who's assigned with you, make them look good, and then everybody will win. It could be a relationship advice too. Now, it was a long time ago that Julian and I talked, so maybe he was doling out relationship at the time, but let's just put it into a business context and leave it there. Next, Melissa Mackey, who's PPC expert, industry thought leader, and all-around awesome woman. She says, meet people skin on and go to conferences. So she's basically saying, get out of your shell, go to conferences. That's one of the best ways to meet people and to shine and to establish relationships, and I couldn't agree more. Larry Kim, you might know him as the founder of WordStream and the most prolific social media person ever. He says, position yourself at the intersection of at least 2 different skills. Now, this is awesome advice. Like, Larry Kim was a computer programmer and he was a marketer. And he said, I could be a marketer, or I could be a computer programmer, or I could be the guy who writes the program to do internet marketing better. And the program he wrote to make internet marketing better was called WordStream. And WordStream is ridiculously profitable and growing like crazy now, and is just like the hottest company in the world, in the marketing world. And Larry Kim did it all because he positioned himself at the intersection of 2 different skills. Jess Ostroff, who's the founder of Don't Panic Management and an awesome VA. Human relationships are the core of every business cooperation. Really, Jess is saying establish relationships because that's the core of everything we do. Ivan Resevich, a marketing technologist, he says, my visit to Super Week was a career changer. So this is a plug for a specific conference. And Ivan and I met at that conference, and basically he's saying being in a conference with all kinds of different marketers and people who are really important in the industry changed everything for him because it gave him the confidence he needed to grow his agency, and it knew that he knew that he was safe among peers. Paul Cox, blogger at Online Metrics and an entrepreneur, he says, books give you knowledge, but taking action makes you a master. So he's saying you need the academic, you need the theory, you need all that stuff that you get from books, but you need to do stuff to become a master. This guy is prolific. Ever since he went and started and worked on Online Metrics on his own, he's publishing like 1 or 2 ultimate guides a week. The guy is insane. He does a great job, and I can't even imagine his stamina. And I try to keep up with him all the time. And this guy is just going 100 miles per hour. So that's exactly what he's putting into practice. Taking action makes you a master. Elizabeth Marston, don't say no to opportunities. Take your chances. Now, she's the director of paid search at Commerce Hub. I met her at the MN Search Summit earlier this year. And she says, don't say no. Do whatever you can. Take the opportunities. And that's really her story. She took a chance, didn't really know anything about online marketing, and suddenly she's the director of paid media and was voted one of the most influential people in all of PPC. "People are my greatest joy" is a quote from Marty Weintraub, the founder of AimClear. This guy, another Minnesotan. Notice how many awesome people are from Minnesota here. It's a little bit of a bias because that's where I'm from, but also there's just a lot of awesome people in Minnesota. Marty was a pleasure. He was just, I don't know, that guy can talk and keep you interested for hours. Make sure you listen to his episode. And he says people are his greatest joy. Anna Lewis, who's a Google Analytics analyst and pretty awesome at that. "The best tool out there is worth nothing if you can't use it to deliver insights to your organization." Couldn't agree more, Anna. Ginny Marvin, who's a paid media reporter at Search Engine Land and Marketing Land, says having a proper mentor is essential for a good jumpstart. I don't know if she specifically said jumpstart to plug our podcast or not, but I couldn't agree more. Having a great mentor can take us a long way. Kirk Williams, founder at Zato Marketing, "Be in line with your goals, but before anything else, be yourself." Kirk has put that into practice, being himself, and really has made a name for himself as just an awesome guy in the PPC world. Aaron Weike, this is the last Minnesotan, I promise, of this part, and he's the chief marketing officer at Get 5 Stars. He says, "How much time does one dedicate to personal branding?" ? And the answer is endless in all caps. Put all the time you can into personal branding. It'll pay off for years into the future. Yehoshua Koren, who's the chief ninja at Analytics Ninja, he says, "Be humble, but don't be afraid to ask questions." Yehosh and I have become good friends over the years, and I really appreciate his perspective. He's a really humble guy and awesome overall. Perna Verji, she's a PPC trainer and evangelist at Microsoft or for Bing. She says, "A job in the agency world gives you breadth, but in-house activity gives you the depth." And so she recommends that you try holding a job both in-house and at an agency in the world of marketing just to see what it's all about and to learn a lot about what's going on. Now, Andrea Warner, she's our final quote. She's the A/B testing evangelist and community architect at Big Barker. She says, "Thank heavens for ADD because that's what pushes most entrepreneurs forward." Andrea was an awesome interview because she told us about her story about getting into online marketing, working with entrepreneurs, coaching them, and sort of babysitting them, using her special training as a teacher, basically getting these entrepreneurs to focus and to apply that to their business. She was a very successful business coach before moving on to several different positions of thought leadership in the online marketing industry. So she says, ADD is what pushes entrepreneurs forward. And maybe that's true for you as well. That's probably a good leaving point here, and that is that I have a little bit of ADD. Maybe you do as well, but since it's a holiday, I'm going to leave it at that. This is a very quick episode, and I love hearing these quotes. It's really fun to look back at a year on a podcast and to put it all out there and to share some of these insights, because there's no shortage of insightful wisdom that we've gained from these audiences. So I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to another year of awesomeness, just like we had in 2016 and even when we started in 2015. So here's to another year of the podcast. And again, for show notes, visit jeffalytics.com/gobble. And then if you have people you'd like to have me put on the episode, knowing who we've had in the past, if you'd like to recommend somebody or make an introduction for a guest in 2016 or 2017 or even beyond, then please do send me an email, jeff@jeffalytics.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. And if you enjoyed this podcast over time and you haven't gotten around to leaving a positive review on iTunes or telling me that you enjoy the podcast, you know, those little things help us go. They help us keep on going. We've been doing this for over a year, and I really enjoy it. No plans to stop anytime soon, but saying that you like it really does help me out. So send me a note, tell me you like the podcast, and tell me what you think about this format as well. Tell me what you think about this quote format, because it's actually pretty fun. And since we've already compiled the quotes, I don't have to do an interview. And so maybe you want to see more of these shorter posts or shorter podcast episodes in the future. So let me know, and I look forward to talking to you soon.